they're both done. So again, I'll show you one at a time, but I'm repeating all of the processes across both of them. We're now going to attach the other little loopies. So again, I'm going to fold in half. And I want that stitch line on the bottom so that it's just so that it's uniform with the others. And I'm just going to match that up to so that it's centralised to the elastic channel and the notch there. Put a clip there. And then I'm also going to put one just here. And then the same on the other side. And then just do that with the remainder. You should have another 4 loops left over after doing that, and then going to do the same on the other boot, and then just going to stitch them in place just within the seam allowance. So just going to do a little stitch here just to hold it in place, ready for the next step. And so yeah, so you have a little stitch here, little stitch here, and here, and here, and do the same on both of them, and then we're ready to attach the back of the boot. So there we go. They've now got their tabs attached as well. So I'm going to cast those just to one side, and we're now going to start work on the back leg pieces, and we're actually going to do a very similar process to begin with that we did on the front, which is to turn over, so we're looking at the batting side, and then you're going to find those notches. So mark the notches onto the batting side of your fabric, and you can go back to your pattern piece and just check on those if you need to. And then we're going to draw a line to match those up and those. Same on the other one. And then we're going to go back to our elastic guide here, and this time we're looking at the back, number 2. They're both going to be the same length. So we come down to size 24, and this time they're going to be 16.3. So I need, in total, I'm going to need 8 of those, because I'm going to need 2 for each of the backs of the boots, and 2 for each of the lining as well. So in total 8. I'm just going to cut the 4 for now, and then I'll cut another 4 when I come to do the lining. So that's 16.2 centimetres. You do need a fair bit of elastic for this project. Oops, Daisy. So I'll cut 4 of those, and then I'm going to do exactly the same as what I did on the front. So we're just going to attach them to one side, and then on the other side. And of course the elastic is shorter than the fabric, which is what you want, because we're then going to stitch that down as we did before, and that will make the curve at the back of the leg there. Just enough stitches to hold it in place, really. because you're then going to stitch all the way through anyway. And within the seam allowance, then pop that under there, needle down to anchor it, and do you remember, just as we did before, stretch that out to cover that pink line, and we're just going to sew all the way along that elastic. Anchor it with a back stitch to begin with, and then you can go. I'm going to trim all these thread tails in a minute, but there's my elastic, and from the reverse side of the boot I've got that nice gather. Same on the other one. There we go, and then I'm going to do that same process on the other boot. But before I do that, I'm going to trim off all these threadies. Do this as you go along, otherwise you will end up with a mess, and you know, these little threads can get caught up in things. So yeah, best to keep it nice and neat and tidy as you go. And there they are, looking nice and rounded with their elastic in them. One last step before we attach them to the fronts is just to put those grosgrain pull tapes at the centre back. So you should have a notch at the centre back, or a mark. There it is, there's my notch. So I just need to position that at the centre back, and I'm just going to baste that in place. Same on the other one. We're just going to baste that in place, and then we're ready to attach the back legs to the fronts. So that's just going to hold it there for a bit. It's all going to get encased eventually by the binding that will go around the top. Like that. It's a nice little detail. All that we've got that done, let's attach the backs and the fronts together. So I've got my front foot there, my back leg there. I'm just going to match those up and sew those together. They're your kind of side seams of your boots, if you like. So the elastic should match up with where that pull loop is. And I push this seam allowance here towards the toe, towards the bottom. The seam allowance, I push towards the bottom, towards the foot area, so all the seam allowances are going towards the bottom. Match those raw edges. A couple more clips for good measure. And there you go, so that's ready to sew, so that will then form the side of your boot. Hopefully that is clear to see. So that's the next seam that we're going to do now. 1 cm seam allowance again. There we go. And there's our boot beginning to take shape. Move you back a bit. Now, before we sew the other sides together, we are just going to do one more step, which is to do a stitch along here and then snip into it, just another kind of stay stitch, and that will allow this back of the heel here to attach to the sole more easily. So again, before I do that, I'm just going to chalk mark those notches, that notch at the centre back, and then let's do a little stay stitch and snip into that. Oops, sorry. Kind of a balance between getting the microphone in my mouth, the camera in the right place, and actually my sewing machine so I can see it. So I'm just stitching along a line just under 1 centimetre. Like this, and then I'm just going to trim up to that line. I don't want to cut through those stitches, but I just want to trim near to them. And when we come to attach the sole, this will sort of splay out around the sole. You see, it just makes it more, it makes it easier to create that curve around the back of the sole there. So again, we're going to repeat this process on the other one. There you go. So that will curve, that will now curve around when we attach the sole. It will curve really nicely. Okay, so again, do that on both of them, and then we're going to just do the other side seam exactly the same as we did the one before. So start by matching up the key areas so that the elastication matches on the back and the front. Clip in there to secure that. Same down here. Pressing the seam allowance towards the bottom. Matching up those edges. That's better. So many layers. There we go. Can you hear Morph in the background? I'm watching Morph on the telly. Couple more clips. And that's the seam, the side seam on the other side done. So it kind of, we're looking at an inside out boot now. So matching up the raw edges with the centimetre line. Might need a bit of encouragement through those bulkier areas where you've got several layers to get through. There we are. So there's the outers of our boots finished. And they're quite cute because they actually sort of stand up by themselves. It's so interesting making these. It's different from things I've made before. I love making something new. So I'm pretty pleased with those. I think they're looking really, really good. But I'm going to call it a day. And I'm going to come back to these tomorrow evening. So I'll upload these videos and then I'll come back to you tomorrow evening to finish them off. So really and truly what you're going to do next actually is you're going to repeat those exact same processes all over again, but with the lining. The only difference being that you don't attach these tabs, but everything else actually, including the elastics, is the same as with the fleece lining and the toe panel as well. And then, you know, so you'll end up with kind of 4 boots, 2 in outer and 2 much more floppier ones in the fleecy lining. So anyway, I shall pop these videos on for you and meet you again tomorrow evening. Bye for now.